Now, our object pool system is working really well, and we can simply attach a recycled GameObject script to any GameObject we want to add to the pool. But what happens in other scripts when we restart a GameObject that's being recycled? Right now, there's no way to actually call restart or shut down on other scripts. In order to do that, we're going to modify the way that our recycled script works to look for other scripts that it'll need to reset whenever it gets reset itself. Let's open up the recycled GameObject script. Now, one of the ways that we can actually implement this is by using something called an interface. An interface is like a type of contract that ensures that a class that uses it will always have the same type of public methods. Here, above our recycled GameObject, we're going to create a new public interface, and we're going to call this interface iRecycle. Now, the two methods that we use inside of our recycled GameObject script are restart and shutdown. So let's put them into our iRecycled interface. Next, we're going to need a way for the recycled GameObject script to actually loop through other children's scripts on the GameObject it's attached to and see if they implement this interface. To do this, we'll need to keep a reference of all the GameObject scripts that have the interface attached to it. Before we can create this list, let's import the generic collections. Now, back in our recycled GameObject class, we're going to create this list of components that implement iRecycle. Next, when our recycled GameObject comes online, we're going to want it to loop through any other scripts on the same GameObject and look to see if they implement iRecycle. Now, previously, we used a method called getComponents. But there's one problem with getComponents. getComponents only works for concrete classes. We can't use that to get all the references of classes that implement an actual interface. So we're going to still have to find all of the scripts attached to the GameObject and then manually loop through to see if they implement iRecycles. We'll do this in the awake method. This way it happens as soon as the class starts up, it'll find the list of all the scripts, and then we don't have to worry about looking for it later again. Let's create a new awake method. And inside of the awake method, let's get all the components attached to the GameObject we're on. Here, we'll use getComponents, making sure we use getComponents with an S because we want to return all of the components attached to this GameObject. And we're going to look for anything that extends mono behavior, since this is a script. Next, we're going to instantiate the recycled components list. Here, we'll make a new list typed to the iRecycled interface. Now, let's loop through all of the components we found and test if they implement iRecycle. Here, we'll create a variable called component in our list of components. Now, as we loop through each of these components, we're going to want to test if component is iRecycle. This will help us determine if the actual component script is implementing this iRecycle interface. If this is true, we'll simply add this to the list. We'll also want to make sure that we cast it as the interface. This is because our list is typed specifically to the interface. This is safe to do because we've already determined that the component is implementing the iRecycle interface. Now, let's add a debug statement so that when we start testing this, we'll be able to determine if the script is actually working. Here, we'll use debug log, and we'll simply use the name of the component we're currently on, found, and we'll use the recycled components count components. Now, when we test this later, we'll check the console log, and we'll see how many recycled components are actually found. The last thing that we actually need to do is in our restart and our shutdown is loop through all the recycled components and tell them to restart or shut down. So here, after we activate our own component, we're going to write a for each loop. We'll do var component in recycled components. And for each component, we'll simply call restart. And let's copy this, and we'll paste it into the shutdown. And here we'll just change restart to shutdown. Next, we're going to clean up the obstacle and show off how this will actually work.